Welcome to the SwimSwam Breakdown. As always, I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, coming to you from Austin, Texas. We are joined by SwimSwam Editor-in-Chief Braden Keith from Finnville, Michigan, and Senior International Reporter Loretta Race from French 75 Boutique in Kentucky. We are getting straight down to business. Let's start this breakdown with the Commonwealth Games. I feel like we've put out a bazillion reports on this already, and you can expect a bazillion more on swimswam.com. With the start list officially being out, who are you most excited to see pop off, make their big international debut, or have their big breakout in Birmingham?
Did Mel tell you we couldn't do pre-question banter anymore?
He said, any fun. No, none of it.
I'm looking forward to Matt Sates. I think maybe some people, I don't know if Ben Dornan, expected too much from him at Worlds when it was clear that South Africa is focused on this meet instead. But, we've got to remember that he's been like teetering on the precipice. And every time he goes after a meet, he makes this big lurch forward. And it didn't come at the World Championships, but he was non-COVID illness, right? It was a non-COVID sick.
Right.
And he said over and over he wasn't tapered, and some of our readers were like, oh, of course he's going to taper, and he wasn't. So I think this is going to be his lurch forward. I think he's got some big swims against Duncan Scott. He's got a big opportunity. I think he's a guy that likes swimming against good swimmers. And I think he likes swimming against Commonwealth swimmers. So I think he's going to have a big meet. And I think this is going to be his big stand where all of a sudden he's David Popovich. He's already part of this next, right? But I think this is the moment where he's going to arrive and make a big dent in the world.
I think that's a good choice. I'm going with 22-year-old Brodie Williams from England. Okay, little known name, but I do think that the men's backstroke events are a little bit wide open. They're not as cut and dry as a lot of the other events, like men's 200 breast, for instance. So Brodie is entered in the 100 back and the 200 back. He has times of 54.88 and 156, which those are solid times. Okay. And he's also doing the 4 IM. He's the only Englishman that's doing the 4 IM. And he has a 4:12 in that event. So I'm looking for him to have his breakout. He's been dropping time, especially in his 200 back. So I'm really having my eyes on him.
He's only a year younger than Luke Greenbank. That was right? Surprising to me.
Yeah, I guess
I kind of thought Luke was older.
Oh,
not even a year. It's like 6 months.
Right.
Oh, that is surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if he was going to be the guy that could come in and finish that relay. That relay's got kind of a window here that probably will evaporate post Paris without some fresh blood. So I'm wondering if he's got the juice to take over that backstroke leg, but he's not as young as I thought he was.
Yeah, I mean, but Mitch Larkin hasn't been doing all that great, quite honestly. And then we know that Isaac Cooper is no longer competing for Australia, at least in the 100 back. So it opens a couple more doors. And it's a home game, so he's going to have that English crowd behind him. So that's, extra motivation. So Brodie Williams, do me proud.
What is Matt Sates actually going to swim? How many South African records do we think he's going to break? Both IMs?
He's doing 2 IMs, 1 fly, 2 free, 4 free. So he's got a packed schedule. If he keeps them all, I'm assuming he will.
Yeah. So I think he can break both. The South African records are 157.0 and 411 in the IMs. And I think he can get both of those. Chad Leclose's 2 free is 145.20. I would have said no a few months ago, but after watching the World's 2 free, I think he could go 144. 4 free is 345.92. I think that's within reach. You don't think he can go 345 mid?
I think he could go 345 mid, but I think 1 or 2 of these is very plausible. I think 3+ of those times, it's he'd have to really be on fire and really be having a good meet, which is totally plausible. I mean, he could do it, but I would say 2. My bet would be 2. I think 2 South African records for Matt Sates.
All right. So on the women's side, who matters? We got Emma McKeon and Kaylee McEwen. Those are the obvious ones. I think Emma's going to be good. We have to remember in the ISL, she had no problem showing up and being good almost every time she raced, even if she was taking a break. So I think she's going to be good. Who else is going to show up on the women's side?
McIntosh. If we're talking about Canada, McIntosh.
Summer, it'll be exciting to see her compete again. It'll be exciting to see Molly O'Callaghan compete again and try her hand at the backstrokes, the 50 and the 100. She's definitely not doing the 200. But there's some young talent that we saw really shine in Budapest that I think can continue that momentum here in Birmingham.
Do you think Molly can be better?
Do I think Molly can be better?
I do.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. I don't think she's going to challenge the Campbell records, but I think she's going to be. I think she can go best times. Schoenmacher, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And Titmus, right?
I was going to say from Australia, Minna Atherton. We didn't get to see Minna perform at Worlds, and she still has a lot of backstroke talent. And so I think this could be her sole focus, obviously, this summer. So I think that could fuel her, and we might see one or two, big performances. She's in the two back for sure.
It feels like at this meet, there's a lot of really fast women, but they don't overlap in the same way that the top men at this meet do, is what it feels like to me. Like, it feels like in the men, there's more good head-to-head races. In the women, it's more just racing the clock. Who can get close to their record.
Everyone kind of has their own events. Or their own
unless
areas.
Molly shows up and maybe picks off Emma in the 100 free. Is she swimming the 100 free? I assume she's swimming the 100 free.
Yeah. Both of those women are.
Oh, because they get 3, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it should be good. Isaac Cooper being out for medication.
They're swearing it's not still knocks. Every media outlet that covers swimming got, I assume, the same anonymous email claiming that it was still Knox, that everybody in Australia knew it was still Knox. And Swimming Australia said that they categorically deny that it was still Knox. There's only really a few drugs that fall into this category, right? And I won't name them because I don't want to speculate too much, but there's only a few things that would be prescription medicines that somebody would have, that somebody could abuse, but that wouldn't actually get you dinged for a doping violation.
Yeah, it was a very oddly worded statement without transparency, right? He has acknowledged his mistakes and accepted the consequences, and Swimming Australia will continue to support him as he addresses these challenges, but it's for well-being challenges that included the use of medication.
It's so dumb because it's going to come out. In Australia, everything always comes out.
Yeah.
Like somebody there is leaking like a sieve, and the big papers always gets it. I don't know why they don't just say, like, in the US, Caleb Dressel can probably keep whatever happened a secret for another month or two. But in Australia, we're going to find out by tomorrow what it was.
Yeah, so that was an odd one. And just, kind of another in this series of this summer of athletes not being that transparent when bad things happen. But what are you going to do? I guess that's swimming for you. Speaking of athletes not necessarily showing up, Duel in the Pool is happening. The U.S. released their roster. What do you feel like it says that out of 23 athletes on our U.S. roster, I think 11 females, 12 males, or vice versa, only 10 of them were world champs participants?
I think people are getting too used to the idea of not competing. I think that's become the popular thing to do, right? Like, I think for a hot minute there, competing a lot was the thing to do. And I think in the US, not competing is becoming the cool thing to do. And I'm sure everybody, if you asked all the people who aren't going, they're going to say, oh, they need a break for their mental health. I've said that before on this podcast, that I don't think just avoiding is really solving the mental health. It's, there's got to be ways to have more positive mental health without just avoiding competition, without just avoiding the media and all those things. But I think right now the trendy thing to do is to take breaks and not compete. So whatever, it is what it is. Australia dropped their first 13 athletes, and so far it looks like they're going to kick the Americans' butts pretty quick. It's such a long travel. It's much easier for the Australians to show up.
But that was going to be my question was, do you think that is the primary reason? If it were in the US or even like Europe, I mean, somewhere, do you think that would have played?
Yeah,
okay.
Because I think it's trendy in Australia to not compete right now too, because they didn't even do the ISL. So I think it's trendy there to not compete, but it's so easy for them to show up to this meet. I think that's why they're going to bring a much better roster. We were talking before the show came on, American swim people. There's these like tiers of swim fandom, right? There's the people who know Michael Phelps. There's the people who can name Caleb Dressel and Katie Ledecky. There's our readers. There's people who can name nobody. But, in this kind of like middle section of swim fans, Americans will know most of the Australians. Australians will not know about 2/3 of the people on the American roster. And the US is still, when you're talking to this level, the US's 100th best swimmer is better than the Australia's 100th best swimmer. So it's not just because the Australians don't know them doesn't mean that that's a total drop off the cliff like it would be in Australia. But I just don't see them competing. I think the US might have a chance if they decide it's in short course. Do we know if it's short course or long course?
Pretty sure it's short course. It would be
and so the American roster is better in short course, right? With like Beta Nelson's a superstar in short course, even though she's not on the long course world's team. So in short course, the US has a shot here, but it's going to be tough.
I'm going to defend Michael Andrew because on the whole, he competes no matter what. He competes and competes and competes. So
agree.
You can't say that about everybody on the roster or general.
And maybe he'll swim 9 races and the Americans will have a chance.
Yeah.
But again, he hasn't done well in the ISL format, and this is sort of an ISL-esque meet. So that doesn't even, I think we're going to see some empty lanes. I still think the meet's going to fall flat. I'm glad we have rosters now, though. I think it's a little more fun now that we have some rosters to start arguing about.
They should add Cody Simpson. They
really do. But
they're probably waiting for Kyle to decide if he's going.
So for Australia, just to give our listeners that little preview, we know that McKeon is on the roster, Caleb McEwen, Zach and Surdy.
Stubblety Cook, I know.
Stubblety Cook. So Maddie Wilson. So
So name the top 7 guys from the swimmers from the Americans.
I mean, honestly, kind of looking at the guy side, it's like Michael Andrew, Shane Casas, rock stars in short course. Ryan Held, rock star short course. Chase Kalish, not a rock star short course, but can do it. Like in IMs,
generally a rock star.
Justin Ress, really good.
Short course.
Trenton Julian in that mid distance range, pretty solid. And then, it kind of goes off from there. I mean, that's like 6 of the 12. So that's half the roster. But I think on the women's side is kind of really where we our best woman is actually by far Beta Nelson because of her short course prowess. And then it's like Mallory Comerford, Annie Laser, Bella Sims.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, yeah. So
and I think there's a chance that the Americans will throw a few more on there once they get through nationals and everybody sees how they feel.
Be pretty cool. I mean, and
I'd take a free trip to Australia, even if I wasn't going to train or taper for it. Maybe that's just me.
It would be pretty cool, but we'll see how that shape up there. I'm sure there will be lots of developments between now and then. The Olympic A cuts came out for 2024 Paris Games. What is interesting about that specifically is that their relay selection will be the top 3 from the 2023 Worlds. Will go through automatically. That's the Summer Worlds in Fukuoka. And the next 13 spots will come from the 2024 World Championships in Doha with no wildcard selections for Olympic relays. How do we feel about this selection process?
So first off, I thought it was fascinating how the Americans responded to this 2024 World Championships versus the Brits. And those are the two countries that we seem to have heard the most from so far. The Americans generally seem to be okay with it, which I thought was really interesting. I'm okay with them using this as an incentive for 2024 Worlds. I don't think if they're having a 2024 Worlds, I think they kind of had to do this. The no wild cards annoys me because that means if you're fourth at 2023 Worlds and you DQ in prelims at 2024 Worlds, you're out. And I think even if you're going to leave one open spot, I think you've got to leave another pathway. I understand that they think if they leave 4 open spots, well, then you might as well just not have any spots from 2024 Worlds because countries like Great Britain then will just bypass them and take the wild card spots. But I think it would have been incredibly exciting to leave one open wild card spot in each relay and have countries just going crazy at all these different meets around the world, chasing relay cuts. One day somebody goes a 303, the next day somebody goes a 302 high and then 302 mid. I thought that would have been like high quality hype for countries that aren't actually going to win medals in the build up to the Olympic Games. So that's really the part I have a bigger beef with than using 2024 Worlds. I mean, for countries like the US and Great Britain, all they have to do is kind of show up and they can be in the top 13 at 2024 Worlds, show up and not get DQ'd. So I don't think that's that big of a deal.
For me, and I texted Braden, like for me, when I was looking at that, I was more focused on the time standards themselves, because to me, it seemed like the A cuts and the B cuts were like this far apart this time around. Whereas Tokyo, there's the definite A cut and then a definite B cut. But you're looking at like the Paris, I'm looking at the men's 50 free, 2196 A, 2207 is B. That's pretty tight. And then that's a 50, but then 4 a.m., 412.50 for the men's 4 a.m. and then for A cut, and then 413.76 for the B cut. Like that's pretty slim.
Yeah. So we're doing an analysis. I don't know when it's going up on how this compares to prior years, but as it turns out, most swimmers who have gotten B cuts historically don't go. In one sense, they're just kind of truing up the cuts with the reality. And maybe not. It's weird, right? Because in swimming, we're so used to like NCAA B cuts are effectively meaningless for anything that matters. And so we're so used to having these cuts just because then people can brag about having hit the cuts. I think it's kind of good because it doesn't give people a false hope. They faced a lot of drama in prior years with people who hit Olympic B cuts, don't get chosen because there's not enough slots left. And then they accuse somebody of malfeasance of either their national federation or the international federation. They're mad at somebody just because they don't really understand the process. And so if the new tighter B cuts are going to be closer to who's actually going to get to go, because not many people go with B cuts, either because they're not invited or because their countries just choose to not take them. So if it's truer to what's actually going to happen, I think I'm kind of okay with that.
All right.
But it is an interesting observation that they've done that. Right. I don't know that the new FINA regime has done nearly as much good as they said they were going to, but I think this is a positive thing that they've done. I like that.
I also saw that and was taken aback, and I'm glad to get the context of a lot of B cuts don't go, which is again super interesting, just because it's like if you qualify for an Olympics, you wouldn't go, but again, lots of factors playing into that. Switching gears to the NCAA world, we had a couple big transfer portal news stories this week. Emma Weyant of Virginia is in the transfer portal, so we'll start with that. The obvious landing spot for her.
I mean, we all know where she's going, right? And I'm not even going to just rely on the girlfriend theory because that feels a little sexist to me, even though it does hold true a lot of the time. she's from Sarasota, and that team, Brent Arkey, I think if he could, would send every one of his swimmers every year to the University of Florida. So there's just all this stuff, cheaper tuition. I think Florida's got a huge couple of classes coming in, but I think they still have enough money to give her in-state tuition. It's just too obvious. Like, if she doesn't go to Florida, I'm really going to want to know why. And it's her decision. She can do what she wants to do. But if it would have to be a really good reason to not go to Florida. They're good at training 400 IMers. She's going to Florida. I'm just saying it now. She's going to Florida.
I'm not going to argue with that. That sounds like a good theory in both cases.
I'm really interested to hear her perspective, obviously, but seemingly she's had some success at Virginia. She didn't have a terrible year. I know she wasn't happy with her 400 IM at Worlds, but she won a medal, a bronze. NCAA seemed to go well for her, right? She was second in the 500 free.
Yes, Coleman, except in the state of Florida, and she's legally the NCAA champion. So,
okay, well, yeah, maybe she really
unpack that any further, but
yeah, maybe she's really chasing that title. But it's interesting. You don't usually see an athlete have the kind of success she did just in general and then transfer to somewhere else. But she did just go through her freshman year, and she was really good coming in.
There's a lot of sharks in that Virginia, and some people like in the biggest shark. And when she goes to Florida, I think in the short term, she's the biggest shark. Bella Sims is going there, so she might be surpassed. But she's either 1A or 1B at the University of Florida. And at Virginia, she's right now at best third, maybe fourth, and a pretty good gap to what Kate Douglas and Alex Walsh have done at the NCAA level. So some people, that matters. She deferred her freshman year at Virginia, so that gives you some indication that maybe she's more inclined to trust Brent Arkey than she is Todd DeSorbel. I don't know. There's a lot of psychology that could go on here, and hopefully we can get her on the podcast. I assume she wouldn't come on until after she makes a decision, and we can sort of ask her to unpack who she talked to, who she was advised by, and why she made the decision, and find out the real answers instead of just guessing. But there's a lot. I think there's a lot of good reasons to leave Virginia, even with the level of success they've had. We just have to find out which one is her reason.
Mm-hmm. I loved some of the theories in the comments. It's like, she should give Wisconsin a look. And which is not,
but I don't think she's
Wisconsin. Yeah. It's like, what if she went to Florida State? It's just there were a couple of random ones.
I don't think Neil wants her at Florida State, because then he'd have to coach 4 IMers, and he doesn't want to do that. He wants to coach sprinters.
I guess that's the assistant's job. I don't know. The other big news story in the transfer portal is that Cal's Isabelle Stadden is staying at Cal. What does this say to you, right? That after everything this Cal program has been to, Isabelle entered the transfer portal, and now she's made the decision to stay in Berkeley.
Just what I've heard through the grapevine about her enthusiasm for staying at Cal and how she responded to us when we asked her about it, I think something's changed, and I think the Cal swimmers know who the head coach is going to be there next year. The rumor mill is that it's going to be that Dave Marsh is going to be involved, whether that means they name him the women's head coach or they combine the program. But it's kind of a Tennessee style thing where Marsh is doing the work and Durden is sort of in name only. People seem to believe that Marsh is going to be involved there somehow. And Marsh, we got to remember that his swimmers haven't had great success the last few years, but circa 2015, he was like the Terry McKeever of the world, right? Where he just had to pick up the phone and make a call, and swimmers wanted to swim for him. So I think just the way she chose to do this, I think they know or have been given an idea of what next year is going to look like. And that's something they're excited about. So we'll see if that news comes out in the next few days, maybe confirming the Marsh story. Remember, Marsh was working with Durden last year when Chase Kreitler went on his paternity leave. So I think they must know something that the rest of us are just waiting to find out.
That would be so wild. I don't see them combining programs just because I don't feel like Durden would want it. But it could be a Tennessee situation. It just blows my mind every time a big coaching change happens. It's like, what?
Right. If they gave Durden $100,000 and basically said, "Hey, Durden, you just got to make sure Marsh is doing what Marsh needs to do." He's going to say, "Oh, okay, I can do that for a year." If it's for a year, because I agree with you. I think Dave has no interest long-term in actually combining the programs, but it's all kind of farcical and in name only. Sometimes the rules are so stupid. Maybe they told Durden he could have another assistant if he sort of played along with this combining programs for a year. I think that's the stupidest rule, that if you have a combined program, each side can have two assistants. If you have separate programs, each side can only have one assistant.
Right.
I hate that rule.
How would you feel like you reckon that, by just giving two assistants to each one in a separated program? Or just do that. And that's what that legislation is on the table. It's about football, but basically to let the schools decide how many assistants they want to have. So the University of Alabama is going to have 6 assistants, and West Virginia is going to have 3. So, that's how that's going to go down in the not so distant future. But interesting. Yeah. Well, that's our main stuff. So now it's time to end our breakdown with a little sink or swim. First up on sink or swim, Thomas Ceccon whacked a second off of his 100 fly best time. He's 51:38, which is freaking legit. My question about that is, at the Paris Olympics in 2024, will Thomas Ceccon medal in 2 different strokes, relays included?
I'm going to swim this, and not because I think he's going to medal individually in the 100 fly. Assuming Dressel continues to swim, I think his ceiling is about 4th or 5th on the 100 fly. Not because I think he's going to swim butterfly on the relay, because right now their second best backstroker is like 2.5 seconds slower, which is shocking to me with how good Italy has been doing. I think he will medal as a member of Italy's 400 free relay, because I think Italy's 400 free relay, which was bronze at Worlds, of course, without a full Great Britain relay, is sort of on target for a golden generation moment in Paris 2024. So they've got Alessandro Moressi, who's 23. They've got Manuel, who's 25. They've got Ceccon, who is only 21. And they've got Lorenzo Zazzeri, who is 27, but is improving every year. So I think that's 4 guys who can split 47 mid on a relay. So you'll have a 47 high leadoff and 3 47 mids. And I think what Ceccon showed with that 100 fly is that he's just a gamer. He's a swimmer. He can figure out maybe a 47 real low off a flying start and 100 free. And I think Italy, they're going to pip either Great Britain or Australia for the bronze. I think both Great Britain and Australia are on the wrong side of their arc in the 400 free relay. And so I think Italy is on the right side. And that's where I think his second stroke is going to come from.
Yeah, I'm swimming it as well. I do think he has relay power. I mean, I know flat start, he's like 47 mid, 47 high, Thomas is. So, I mean, that's with the relay start, even more time under his belt. I think it's just going to happen, and he's going to be a part of that.
Yeah,
I'll swim it. I think he's got relay medal potential. I think obviously 100 back looks good for him. I think he could medal in the 100 fly too, because why not swim it? Because what else is he going to do at the Olympics, right? I mean, won't swim. I would be surprised if he swim 100 free and like 100 back is day 2 and 3, 100 fly is like 6 and 7. It's like,
mixed
why not?
medley. Does Italy have enough for him to worry about the mixed medley? Which race we don't know which race comes first because we don't know the Olympic schedule. We know how to qualify, but we don't know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I don't think Italy has enough for the mixed medley. They were in Budapest. I guess they were 5th. He was on it.
They've got good female breaststrokers, but that's not the way to medal in a mixed medley.
No, yeah, they were 0.2 out of 3rd for medaling. Actually, I mean, it was him and Nicolo Martinenghi at the first 2, and then they had Elena Delito and Silvia De Pietro. So I guess they could. He'll have a busy schedule, but yeah.
So if we assume that they don't change the schedule significantly, they just kind of move things around. The 100 back is before the 100 fly in the Olympic schedule. So you can throw a flyer at it.
Next up on Sink or Swim, we sat down with Torri Huske. We talked all about her first year at Stanford, her amazing world championships, where she was the MVP of the SwimSwam fantasy draft. And she told us that she was training for the 400 IM with Greg Meehan at Stanford, because I think that's Greg's strategy for everyone, honestly. And it seems to not be such a bad thing. However, sink or swim, Torri Huske will swim the 400 IM in a dual meet this season and will go under 4:04.
I'm going to swim that she's going to swim it, because come on, Greg, do it for the culture. And here's why. The last 7 Olympic champions in the women's 200 IM are the exact same as the last 7 Olympic champions in the women's 400 IM. Torri Huske is a very good 200 IMer. That says to me that she's also a very good 400 IMer. I'm going to swim it. Although I will point out that the last 3 Olympic runners-up in the 200 IM have not medaled in the 400 IM, but we're going to ignore that data in favor of the other one. We're going to focus on the one that supports our position, not negates it.
Retta?
Okay. I'm torn on this one because I'm thinking it because I see her.
Converter?
What?
You need a time converter to figure out what 404 is in long course?
Kind of, but I'm just, in my eyes, okay, she's a true sprinter and that's how I see her. So she's supporting she's a sprinter, always a sprinter theory that I'm just thinking it for that reason. Dumb reason.
Fair enough.
No, I think that's fair. She's twitchier than the average 200 IMer probably.
Yeah.
Well, and again, to go back to what I said earlier, I think Stanford has a lot more 400 IMers on their team than they do 50 and 100 freestyler and 100 flyers. So in a dual meet setting, they might be like, yeah, this would be the one, Torri, but you got to swim the sprints.
And she had such an awesome worlds in her sprint events that it's like, okay, the trajectory is there for Paris. Like, I don't know. I kind of want her to stick to her bread and butter and like just hone those and just kick ass basically in Paris. And don't throw something else into the mix.
No better way to trade for the 50 free than the 400 IM, which is why our women's sprint group is excelling internationally right now, right?
So this is a clarification. She's not going to focus on racing the 400 IM internationally or at trials or anything. Like, she's like, I don't want to do that. I just want to make my 200 IM better.
Well, nobody ever wants to do the 400 IM.
Right.
Your coach suggests you train with the 400 IM group for a little while, and then he suggests you swim it at a dual meet, and then he suggests you swim it at NCAAs, and then you're a 400 IMer. That's just how it goes.
No one chooses the 400 IM. You get groomed for the 400 IM.
Like Caitlin Leverins did not choose the 400 IM. She was just pushed toward it.
I think that was the same with Melanie Bergalis too.
Yeah,
I'm sinking
Melanie
it too.
Hates the 400 IM.
I'm sinking this as well, only because I don't think she will swim it in a dual meet this year. but I hope if she does, I do think she will go for it.
I am texting Greg Meehan right now while you guys do whatever the
Put
next question
her in. Put her in. All right, last up, another NCAA rising sophomore, Aiden Hayes, dropped a 51.7 in the 100 fly at the Mizzou sectionals this past weekend. Do you think Aiden Hayes will be NC State's top scorer this season at NCAAs?
Okay, I'm just going to sink it because I'm going for the international swimmer. I'm going with Nils Korstanhi. I think he's going to be the top scorer. So that's who I'm going with as opposed to Mr. Aiden.
I'll go while Braden looks up numbers. I'm going to swim it. I think Aiden's going to have a big year this year. He's already got great underwaters. I think 100 and 200 fly, he's going to be a stud. He can also do the 50 free really well. So I think he's going to score 50 plus points at NC's this year. And I think that will be NC State's top scorer.
I think he's an absolute stud. He didn't have like an all-time Matt Sates kind of freshman season. But I think it's been clear for a long time that he was, freshman 6 weeks.
3 weeks, whatever.
Freshman 15 days.
It's been clear for a long time that he was a stud, and this long course breakout just shows that. NC State's top scorer at NCAAs only had 29 points. They just had a ton of scorers. So if that's the bar again for next year, he's definitely going to score at least 30 points at NCAAs. I feel confident declaring that he will score 30 points at NCAA. So I'm going to swim it.
Nice.
Casper doesn't even really have a great second event, let alone a third event.
Speaking of which, I talked to, let's see if I say this right, Xavier. I think that's how he told me to pronounce it. Mashuk today.
The Polish guy.
Yeah. He's not going to NC State till after Paris. Still planning on NC State, but not after Paris. That podcast is dropping soon, but in case this one drops first, it's a little tidbit for everyone.
That's interesting.
Not going till after Paris. And he has trained with Casper. Casper was a big reason why he chose NC State. He was talking to other schools as well, but ultimately NC State was the one for him. And
so if he wins a medal in Paris, he'll never show up.
Exactly. That's exactly where my mind went.
if history repeats itself. So we'll see. But drop that little tidbit. That's the SwimSwam Breakdown. Tune in every week for your week's news in swimming.